The Blood King has fallen, but his shadow still poisons the throne. Edvin escaped death, only to face a kingdom built on deceit. Allies turn into traitors. Truth hides behind a friendly face. 7 kingdoms. One fragile crown, the war for the North is done. But the battle for trust has just begun. Now begins the war for the soul of the realm. Thank you for joining us for Episode 5. Stay with us to follow our hero's journey ahead. The land of the ice. God, when the first ray of sunlight touched the frozen plains, the ground shimmered as if someone had poured light over a sea of silver. Edvin held his horse's reins tightly, riding toward the mountains. Sorcerer was now far behind, but those words still echoed in his mind. The fortress is yours, Edvin, but the war isn't over yet. Harold rode up beside him. Chief, we've been riding for 3 days. No village, no trees. If the Ice King really lives beyond that mountain, we need to find the way soon. Edvin looked up at the sky. Only those who forget their destination start searching for the path. We must remember our purpose. The air was biting cold. Every breath felt like it froze mid-air. The horses in their caravan were exhausted, but there was still a spark in Edvin's eyes. The memory of Ella, the revenge for his father, and the vow to unite all 7 kingdoms under one banner burned inside him like fire. The Valley of White Death on the 4th day. They reached a valley where the snow was piled several feet thick. Audric said, "This is the place they call the White Death. No one who enters ever returns." Edvin smiled. "Then we'll be among the few whose names history will remember." They stepped into the icy valley. The world was silent except for the whispering wind. Suddenly Harold drew his sword. Something moved. A shadow was rising from beneath the snow. The next moment 5 masked warriors burst out, their white armor blending with the snow as if the frost itself had taken form. Edvin leapt from his horse, meeting the first strike with his blade. Sparks flew. One of the snow soldiers shouted, "You have no right to be here!" Edvin countered, "I didn't come to ask for permission. I came to make history." The battle was fierce. Harold was wounded in the shoulder. Audric fell but got back up. Soon the enemies began to retreat. Edvin caught one of the injured warriors. "Who are you?" The man gasped. "We are the Ice King's guards. He forbids anyone from crossing this valley alive." Then he went still. The city of ice hours later, the caravan reached a high cliff. Between the mountains lay a frozen city, its buildings carved from ice. Rivers turned to glass, and strange runes etched into the rocks. Audric whispered, "This must be Narval, the Ice King's city." Edvin said, "We come in peace. But if he wants war, we won't back down." They entered the silent city. The only thing that caught Edvin's attention was a massive statue, an ice-sculpted god with blue, glowing eyes. Harold murmured, "They say those who bow before him never return." Edvin replied, "I bow to only one god, and he doesn't live in this ice." Suddenly, a horn echoed in the distance. Dozens of soldiers appeared, spears raised. At their front stood a tall figure, a white cloak, a silver crown, and eyes as cold as the glacier itself. "I am Arok, the King of Ice. Who dares step on my land?" Edvin stepped forward. "I am Edvin, son of the North. I come seeking unity, not slavery." Arok's lips curved slightly. "You killed my guards. Do you seek unity or vengeance?" Edvin drove his sword's tip into the ground. "If you live with justice, this sword will defend you. But if you don't, it will rise against you." The king was silent for a moment, then said, "You are brave, but the cold respects no courage. Tomorrow you will face my trial. If you survive, you'll be my brother." The trial of ice. The next morning, Edvin was taken to the edge of a frozen lake. Arok said, "This is the lake of our god. Whoever crosses it becomes the heir of truth. But those who fear turn into ice forever." Edvin removed his armor, took his sword, and stepped onto the ice. It creaked beneath his feet, but he kept moving forward. The wind began to whisper, as if unseen voices were calling, "Turn back." Edvin spoke silently to himself, "I won't turn back from a promise sealed in blood." Suddenly the ice cracked, and he plunged into the freezing water. The cold stabbed like fire. Harold shouted his name, but Edwin slammed his sword into the ice and pulled himself out. He looked to the sky, raised his hand and said, "I did not give up." Arok watched in disbelief. "I've never seen a man defy the god of ice and live." He lowered his sword. "Edwin, from this day you are my brother. The Ice Kings stand with you." The beginning of unity that evening. A great fire burned in the city square. People gathered as Edwin and Arok raised their swords before the crowd. "This is our vow. The North and the South are now one." Cheers erupted. The sunlight struck the ice, turning the valley golden. For the first time in a long while, peace filled Edwin's heart, but along with it came a strange feeling that this peace was only the calm before the storm. That night, as everyone slept, Edwin stood atop the fortress walls, far across the frozen plains. He thought he heard someone whisper his name, "Edwin." He turned sharply, and in the distance saw the faint outline of a woman, Ella. He ran down, but found nothing, only wind, snow, and an empty path. Edwin whispered, "Ella, if you're alive, I will find you." He looked up at the sky once more. One kingdom awakened, but 5 still remain. And with each one, my promise grows deeper. Snowflakes drifted in the air. In the far distance, war drums began to echo, and a new chapter of history was about to begin. The traitor's breath. The nights in the icy fortress were silent, but behind the silence lurked the sound of danger. Edvin sat in his tent, looking at a map. The candle flame trembled with the gusts of wind. Udrik sat beside him despite his wounds. "Chieftain, we have won over the Ice King, but I fear the enemy is hidden among us." Edvin looked up. "What are you trying to say?" Udrik spoke softly. "Last night, someone saw a masked man near the stables. He was trying to poison the horses." Edvin slammed his hand on the table. "Then why is he still alive?" "He escaped, Chieftain. He only left one sign." Udrik offered a small piece of leather. It had the mark of the sun and the serpent on it. Edvin took a deep breath. "I know this sign. It belongs to the tribe of Lorcan." The smoke of conspiracy morning broke, and the sun's rays froze in the snow. Edvin told everything to Arok, the Ice King. Arok said, "No enemy can remain alive in my fortress. But perhaps this enemy has come from your past." Edvin replied, "My past holds only blood, but now that blood gives power to my sword." Just then, a soldier ran in. "Chieftain, the east gate has been attacked." Edvin and Arok immediately ran towards the fortress gate. There, a few bodies lay in the snow, and on the wall was written in blood, "The alliance is a lie. Your end is near." Arok gritted his teeth and said, "Who could have written this?" Edvin answered with a slight smile, "The one who tried to inspire fear does not know that I turn fear into a weapon against my enemies." The fire of ice as. Evening fell, torches were lit in the fortress hall. Arok summoned the chieftains of his army. Edvin stood among them and spoke. "The enemy is no longer outside the walls, but among us. From today, every guard, every soldier must swear an oath of loyalty more than their own life." A soldier stepped forward and asked, "What will be the order if a traitor is caught?" Edvin placed his sword on the table. "If that traitor turns out to be my own brother, I myself will sever his neck." Silence fell over the hall. Arok looked into Edvin's eyes. "You have the fire that can burn even the winters. But remember, sometimes fire turns itself to ash," Edvin said quietly. "I am the one who rises from the ash." Ella's shadow as the night deepened, Edvin went up to the ramparts. The icy gusts of wind struck his face. In the valley far away, he saw a light, as if someone had lit a torch. "Harold!" Edvin called out. "Look, there is someone in the valley." Harold looked closely, perhaps a traveler. "But at this hour?" Edvin said, "No, that light is calling to me." He rode alone on his horse and descended into the valley. The sound of the horse's hooves echoed on the snow. The light drew closer, then suddenly went out. Silence. Edvin drew his sword. "Who is there?" A soft voice came. "Edvin." Edvin's heart pounded. "Ella." A woman's shadow emerged from behind the snow. Under the veil, her eyes had the same shine he had seen years ago. "You are alive." Edvin stepped forward, but she retreated. "No, Edvin, I am not the Ella you know. Now I am the enemy's captive." Edvin's steps stopped. "By whom?" Ella said softly, "The one who killed your father, Lorcan." Blood rushed to Edvin's face. "He is still alive?" "Alive and powerful too. He has sworn to stop your kingdoms from uniting." Tears flowed from Ella's eyes. "I was imprisoned in his fortress, but he sent me here to lure you into a trap. And you came. Because I want you to be saved." Suddenly Edvin felt a shadow moving behind Ella. A spear lashed through the air. Edvin pushed Ella away. The spear plunged into the snow. About 10 masked enemies emerged. Edvin raised his sword. "You have chosen the wrong time." The battle began. Sparks flew on the snow. Edvin struck down 2 enemies. Ella was wounded. Harold arrived just in time and attacked the enemies. Finally, they fled, but Edvin had a deep wound on his arm. The ashes of separation. Ella was on the ground, her breathing broken. Edvin cradled her head in his lap. "Ella, open your eyes." Ella said in a faint voice, "I thought it better to give my life than to deceive you. Lorcan is waiting for you, Edvin. He knows you will come for him." Edvin's eyes filled with tears. "I promise I will bring you back." Ella smiled and said, "Don't look for me. Just finish him." And then the breath left her lips. Edvin remained silent for a moment, then looked up at the sky. "I promised you I would return. Now this promise will be fulfilled with blood," Harold said quietly. "Chieftain, will we march against Lorcan now?" Edvin drove his sword into the ground. "No, not yet. First, we will strengthen this land. Lorcan will fall only when the 7 kingdoms are under one flag." A new resolve as the sun rose. Arok's soldiers gathered around Edvin. Edvin said, "I give you a promise. This snow will turn to blood, but this time not of a traitor, only of the enemy." Arok raised his sword. "The Ice Kings are with you, Edvin. We will burn Lorcan's kingdom." Edvin gave Ella one last look. Now the war will be not just for a purpose, but for a promise. Icy winds began to blow. Clouds thundered across the sky. The story took a new turn, where love, revenge, and the borders of the kingdom began to merge. The shadow of conspiracy. The snow had melted, but the cold still lingered in the ground. Month had passed since the alliance. Of Sorsa and Arok, new flags were fluttering on the fortress ramparts, but there was still a silence in Edvin's heart, a silence that only gives birth to revenge. At night, when everyone else slept, he would go and sit by Ella's grave. The flame of the torch burning above the snow trembled on his face. "I made you a promise. Ella," he would say slowly, "I will ensure you get justice." Ordric often stood afar and watched this scene. Harold said one day, "The chieftain now lives for only one purpose, revenge. But will this purpose lead us forward?" Ordric took a deep breath. "As long as there is pain in his heart, he will not be defeated. But if this pain turns into anger, he will burn himself out." Council of Kings Arok summoned Edvin to his palace. The Ice King, representatives of Sorsa, and chieftains of the eastern tribes were present in the hall. Arok said, "Edvin, we are with you. But you are saying that it is essential to unite all 7 kingdoms against Lorcan. This is not easy. Every king is the owner of his land, not yours," Edvin said in a calm tone. "I am not asking for anyone's land, only for a promise. Lorcan is not a kingdom, he is a poison. As long as we remain divided, he will finish us off one by one." Sorsa's representative spoke. "And if we support you and you lose?" Edvin replied, "Then I will die alone, but I will not let Lorcan's shadow fall over your children's heads." Hearing this, Arok fell silent. A while later he stood up and said, "I bear witness to your resolve, Edvin, but we need a new mind. Someone who can understand Lorcan's schemes before he executes them." Edvin asked, "What do you mean?" Arok said, "I know someone, a former spy named Adress. He once worked for Lorcan, but is now exiled. He might be able to help you." The appearance of Adress. 3 days later, Edvin reached a desolate, snow-covered village. Smoke was rising from an old hut there. Inside, a man was sitting, hair white, but a strange light in his eyes. Edvin said, "Are you Adress?" He laughed and said, "People call me a traitor, but I just call myself alive. Are you the one who must stand against Lorcan?" "Yes," Edvin said. "I am the one who wishes to see his end." Adress looked up and said, "Then listen. Lorcan wins not by might, but by cunning. He will defeat you when you lose faith in yourself." Edvin said, "Just tell me one thing. Where is he?" Adress replied with a slight smile, "Where you would least expect it, among your own tribe. Lorcan was not alone in your father's murder. A close friend of yours was also with him." Blood rushed to Edvin's face. "Who?" Adress said, "When the time comes, you will recognize him yourself. But until then, be patient, because every face around you could also be your enemy." Doubt and shadows upon returning to the fortress, Edvin was changed. He looked closely at every soldier, every guard. Harold felt that the chieftain's trust had now turned into doubt. One night, Ordric said, "Chieftain, you are not the same as before." "There is a heavy burden on your heart," Edvin replied. "When you know that someone close to you is with the enemy, your heart is never light." That same night, Edvin requested the list of his old soldiers. He looked at the names one by one. Suddenly, his gaze stopped at one name, Kieran, the same person who had fought with Edvin's father in his last battle, but disappeared afterward. "Kieran," Edvin said slowly, "if you are alive, I will find you." A line of blood in the snow the next morning, Edvin told a rock, "I am going to find Lorcan's spy." "I need a small detachment," a rock said. "This is dangerous." "Those areas are traps for you," Edvin replied. "I will not fall into a trap. I will set one myself." He set out with 5 soldiers. After 3 days of travel, they reached a desolate valley where there were fresh tracks of horses in the snow. Edvin said, "They have passed through here. Be ready." Suddenly a rain of arrows began from behind the hill. Soldiers started falling to the ground. Edvin raised his shield. "Take cover!" Then a voice echoed, "Edvin, you finally made it here." A person on horseback appeared in front. His face was covered with a mask, but the voice was familiar. Edvin said, "Kieran?" He laughed. "Yes, it is I. I was the one who killed your father, not on Lorcan's orders, but by my own will. Because he was weak, and you are just as weak." Edvin raised his sword. "Today your neck will speak, not your tongue." A fierce fight began between the two. The glint of swords and splashes of blood on the snow. Finally, Edvin broke Kieran's sword with one blow. Kieran fell to the ground, panting, and said, "Lorcan will never let you win. He will bring back Ella too." Edvin said angrily, "Ella is dead." Kieran laughed. "No, she is alive, and waiting for you in Lorcan's fortress." Edvin was startled. "What?" Kieran smiled and said, "The truth often appears late," and then he took his own life with his dagger. Edvin remained motionless for a while. Only one name was echoing in his mind, Ella. A new decision upon returning to the fortress. Edvin told Arok everything. "If Ella is alive, this is not just a hint, it's a declaration. Lorcan wants me to go to him myself." Arok said, "This could be a trap," Edvin replied. "Then I will set that trap on fire." He summoned all the soldiers and said, "The time has come. We will advance towards Lorcan's territory. Even if the path leads to death, our victory lies beyond it." The soldiers raised their swords in the air. "For Edvin! For Ella! For the kingdom!" Their voices echoed in the icy wind. The sun was setting, but the light still remained. The story was at a new turning point, where a final frontier remained between hope and revenge. Shadowhold. The night was deep. There was no moon in the sky. Only snowflakes glittered in the darkness. Edvin was crossing the icy plains with his army. Before them lay Lorcan's territory, Shadowhold, famous for its darkness and magic. Adress, who had now become Edvin's advisor, spoke. "This fortress is not just built of stones. There is a curse around it. Every path here leads to the wrong direction," Edvin replied. "Silence is more dangerous than a curse." "We will break that too." Arok, Ordric, and Harold were all together. There was no fear on their faces but uncertainty, because if Ella was alive, why was she with the enemy? Passage through the Shadow Valley. The next morning, the sunlight filtered through the clouds and fell upon the earth. Edvin stopped his army. "This is the valley through which Lorcan's armies pass. If we go through here, we will be seen. But if we go by the mountain path, half the men will be buried in the snow." Arok said, "Then decide, chieftain. Danger or sacrifice?" Edvin closed his eyes for a moment and said, "Danger, because we will not make sacrifices for the enemy." They entered the valley. There was silence everywhere, only the crunch of footsteps muffled by the snow. A dress said softly, "This silence is unnatural. Someone is watching us." His words were not finished when hundreds of arrows began raining down from the mountains. The soldiers started screaming. Edvin raised his shield. "Pull the horses back! Take cover!" But it was too late. The enemies surrounded them from all sides. Lorcan's soldiers were wrapped in black armor, with a red glow in their eyes. Among them, a veiled woman was riding on a horse. Edvin's gaze fixed upon her. His heart started pounding. He spoke slowly. "Ella?" The meeting that became a wound. The woman dismounted, lifted her veil, and Ella's face appeared. Edvin stood still for a few moments. "It's not possible," Ella said in a harsh tone. "You shouldn't have come here, Edvin. Lorcan wants to finish you, and I am his sword." Edvin's heart seemed to turn to stone. "You are with him? You sided with my enemy?" Ella said, "I saw you die, Edvin. I was a prisoner. He said you were dead, and when I survived it was only for revenge. But when I woke up I had become a part of his kingdom." Edvin took a step forward. "So you forgot everything? Our promise? Your father's grave, your village, everything?" Tears welled up in Ella's eyes. "I haven't forgotten, but I am not free." Then she gestured, and Lorcan's army attacked. Edvin shouted to his army, "Defend! No one retreats!" Swords clashed, screams echoed, blood froze on the snow. Edvin moved towards Ella, but she stood with her sword drawn. Their swords clashed. Ella said, "I don't want to hurt you." "But you must leave," Edvin said. "I will leave. But with you." Ella closed her eyes. "That's not possible now." At that moment Lorcan's voice boomed. "You will die with her, Edvin." Lorcan's appearance, a tall figure, emerged from the midst of the fog, wrapped in black armor, his face half burnt, but red flames in his eyes. This was Lorcan, the Blood King of the North. "Edvin," he roared, "your father broke my sword, I took his life. Now it's your turn." Edvin said, "My father fought not against a king, but against a monster. Today I will complete his work." Lorcan laughed. "You have only a few soldiers left, and your beloved is mine now." Edvin looked at Ella. "Is this true, Ellen?" Ella remained silent. Lorcan put his hand on her shoulder. "You see, she is my sword now." Something broke inside Edvin. He raised his sword to the sky and screamed, "Ella, if you truly belong to him, let me witness his death." The two kings lunged at each other. The ground shook. Lightning flashed in the sky. When the swords clashed, flames of fire erupted. The surrounding soldiers backed away. Finally, Edvin tore through Lorcan's armor with a single blow. Lorcan stepped back but smiled. "You think you have won. You have only wounded my body. My shadow is still alive." Then he shoved Ella. "Finish him or I will burn your village." Ella raised her sword, but her hands were trembling. There were tears in her eyes. Edvin said, "Do it. If my death will free you, then that will be my victory." Ella threw down her sword and plunged a dagger into Lorcan's chest. Lorcan's scream echoed in the valleys. "You betrayed me." "Ella!" He fell to the ground and cracks began to appear in the fortress walls. Ella staggered. Edvin held her. "It's all over," she whispered. Edvin said, "No, it's just the beginning." The end of shadows. With Lorcan's death his magic ended. The snow began to melt. The sky cleared. Edvin signaled to the army, "Let's go back." "This land is free now," Ella said softly. "I am not free. I have wounds inside that can never heal." Edvin held her hands. "I will live with those wounds. Having you with me is enough." The two walked out of the fortress gate, and the sun was rising in the background, a sign of a new beginning, but with the echoes of old shadows. The calm before the storm, the snow had melted. Sunlight was pouring into the valleys. Lorcan's fortress, once shrouded in darkness, had now turned into desolate ruins. Edvin and Ella walked out of the fortress gate in silence. Their footprints were left in the snow, as if history was writing its new line. Smoke was rising from the distant mountain peaks, the smoke that rises from the fire of the past and foretells the coming wars. A dress came up and said, "Chieftain, the enemy soldiers have fled. But some prisoners say that Lorcan's magic has not ended. He used to say that my shadow will live even after my death." Edvin said slowly, "Even if the shadow dies, the darkness leaves its mark." "We must become the light," Ella asked in a weary tone. "And where will we go now, Edvin?" Edvin looked up at the sky where the table of the 7 kings is. "That is my promise, that is my destination." Silent caravan. For many days, Edvin's army traveled across the snowy plains. There was silence on the road, but the same thought in every soldier's heart: is peace truly possible? Harold said, "We won the war, but the coldness in hearts still remains." Edvin smiled and replied, "Peace doesn't just come from the end of a war. It has to be created." One evening, as they were setting up camp, Edvin went and sat alone under a tree. He drove his sword into the ground and looked up at the sky. "Father, I took the revenge for which you gave your life. But now I understand. Justice is a much harder task than revenge." Ella came up slowly and said, "There is no war in your eyes now, only pain." Edvin said, "This pain reminds me that I am still alive. And as long as I am alive, I will not give up." The shadow lives. The next night, while everyone was asleep, a red light suddenly appeared in the sky. The ground began to shake slightly. A dress came running. "Chieftain!" Flames of fire arising from the direction of the fortress. Everyone climbed the hill. In the distance, red fire was piercing the sky from Lorcan's fortress. Ella said in a trembling voice, "How is this possible?" "He was dead." Edvin said, "Maybe he didn't die, or maybe his shadow truly lives." A dress said, "Some people say that his followers now wear white masks, and they are waiting for a new leader." Edvin silently placed his hand on his sword. "Then we will soon face a new enemy. But this time we will be ready." The last promise. Before sunrise, Edvin and Ella stood on the edge of the valley. Ella said softly, "Will all 7 kingdoms truly be with you?" Edvin smiled and said, "No, not all. Some will oppose, some will betray. But one day they will understand that the enemy is no one else but themselves." Ella placed her hand on his shoulder. "And when that day comes?" Edvin looked up at the sky. "I might not be there, but my dream will surely live on. The story is not over yet." The caravan set off again. The snow had melted, but the ground was still cold. Light was emerging from behind the mountains. Edvin rode on his horse, turned back one last time and said, "Lorcan is not dead, but neither have we stopped. This journey is no longer just mine. It is the journey of history." Ella's prayer echoed in the wind. The soldiers raised their torches high, and the caravan slowly moved away, where a new enemy, a new alliance, and a new ending awaited them. Victory was only a dream. Lorcan is gone, yet his shadow still whispers in the dark. The 7 crowns smile, but behind every smile hides a blade. Edvin's greatest enemy isn't their sword. It's the doubt spreading like poison in every heart. The war is over, but the game of betrayal has just begun. Thank you for watching this intense chapter. Your support keeps this world alive, and trust me, what comes next will change everything. Stay with us, because in the next episode, even heroes won't know who to trust. The truth is coming, and it won't stay buried for long.